it all started around that time with Goat and then VirtuOles opening their platform for anyone to launch an agent. Moore's law progression just in technological advancement. I wouldn't be shocked to see it very, very widely integrated in gaming in the near future. We were about to see really an explosion in experimentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the DeFi Podcast. Today, I have both JF and Rhett with me as usual, and we are joined by a very special guest, Austin Barak. Hi, Austin. Austin is the founder and managing partner of Relayer Capital. Previously, he was also a partner at the crypto investment firm CoinFund here in New York City. Austin, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today, bud?
Hey, Bill, JF, Rhett, how you guys doing?
Great.
It's been a really, really interesting last couple of months, especially as everything within AI has inflected. So it's been very exciting, and glad to be here with you today to chat.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you for making the time. We appreciate it. So we all got together and we got to meet you, Austin, a few months ago. I'd love to start by getting a broad overview of kind of what you've been paying attention to over the past 3 months, specifically in the crypto AI space. When we met, I think it was like mid or maybe a little bit early October. And at the time, GOAT, I think, had just started trading. It wasn't really on my radar yet, but I noticed that you were tweeting about VirtuOles and you were into the AI meta really early. And it seems like you kind of locked in on this narrative and have been focused on it for the past 3 months. So I would love to kind of just get your thoughts on what you've been paying attention to over the past 3 months.
Yeah, definitely. It's wild how quickly it's inflected. And I think that's just what crypto is. You have the entire world connected, information connected at the speed of light, and things just progress a lot faster when there aren't those hurdles or friction points that you see in other industries, and also everything is open source. So it really started to move around that time. So you mentioned GOAT came out and started to really catalyze this meta where the idea of AI and AI on chain and controlling wallets on chain and these personalities and characters driven by AI and what that could be. There's the whole lore with Mark Andreessen and how GOAT started. But it really took off when VirtuOles made an update to their platform where they made the launch of AI agents permissionless. And now all of a sudden you went from something that wasn't really easy to launch agents and took a lot of technical, rigor and complexity to something where it was almost like the pump funification of AI agents, where now you have this permissionless platform where anyone in a low code, no code way can launch agents. And it started with their own agent, Luna, which has built a TikTok following of 500,000. That was like the original proof of concept. But since then, I think they're at 14,000 agents that have launched on VirtuOles. And then we saw AIXBT and their ELIZA framework being released on Solana. And then AI Rig Complex and, Cerebro and a whole bunch of other different agents and frameworks, and AIXBT as this just, essentially creating the category of AI agents as true KOLs with 400,000 followers now. So it all started around that time with GOAT and then VirtuOles opening their platform for anyone to launch an agent. Once it graduates and it moves up the bonding curve, that gets fixed in the liquidity pool. But as it's launching, you need VirtuOles tokens to buy the agent. And then also the initial liquidity pools can only be purchased with VirtuOles. So, while it sits within Base as the execution layer, it has a lot of qualities that are very similar to layer one tokens, where the base pair of all of these agents is virtual.
I understand. Okay, so VirtuOles is the platform that you use to launch on Base, and then is it AIXBT or the ELIZA framework that you use on
so
Solana?
AIXBT and ELIZA are probably the second most dominant framework, and the market is bifurcating into these two segments: low code / no code, which is where VirtuOles has really run away with the lead there, and then other frameworks, ELIZA being one of the major ones, where it's much more focused on giving developers not necessarily just more flexibility, but a lot more customizability. But it also requires developers that are much more advanced than folks that don't even really need to have significant development backgrounds to launch on virtual. And I think you can almost look at it as the bifurcation of apps and app chains, where they often serve similar purposes, but apps are a lot easier to spin up, and app chains can be a lot more can have a lot of additional functionality. And that's, I know you guys are deeply involved in the Avalanche ecosystem, super bullish on, app chains and L1s launching there. And I think that's probably a pretty interesting parallel. And I think there's room for both of these segments to be very, very successful. The virtual side of things and, the Eliza Arc side of things as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And if memory serves me right, like basically when GOAT came out in October, it had this big run, kind of change people's minds a little bit on what can happen with AI and crypto, just because it rallied so hard. But then it kind of cooled off going into the election. And then after the election happened and Bitcoin, basically went through 100K, a bunch of other AI agents also kind of perked up and blew through the previous high set by GOAT. But in like mid to late October, you were already pretty bullish AI. So I want to ask you a little bit, kind of like why was that? And when you think about, people have been bullish AI and crypto, obviously, since ChatGPT hit market, but like at that specific time, I could just tell you were really locked in and spending a lot of time on it. What convinced you at the end of October, kind of like this was the right timing to kind of get involved in AI and crypto?
Yeah, so we've seen such an incredible amount of excitement, attention, capital inflows to meme coins, and what was happening with AI agents at that point, it was really just the very beginning, was that same sort of infrastructure being put in place that allows tens of thousands of meme coins to launch a day, but for something that can provide real utility in the form of AI agents. So I thought we were about to see really an explosion in experimentation. And that's what I found really exciting. And, that ended up happening with VirtuOles. And the markets needed a couple examples of, what was possible. So, initially VirtuOles had their Luna agent, which is, an on-chain influencer and, TikTok character. And it was very, very personality driven. And that was that first move up where we started to see experimentation in that segment. And then the next one, which has really been the breakaway winner, at least so far, and I'm incredibly bullish on this, also not financial advice, is AIXBT and the creation of, let's call it an alpha agent and a tokenized KOL and a category of crypto Twitter that has near human level intelligence, but can process orders of magnitude more information and data. And, I started following AIXBT really, really early. And what I noticed just from its Twitter account is it was surfacing really actionable, high alpha trade ideas and investment ideas. And I'm running Relayer Capital on my own, and it started to become like the best liquid research analyst that I could ever imagine hiring, just as an AI agent. And then I started investing there, and I got terminal access, and the terminal gives so much more functionality than you even see on Twitter. And
wait, I'm sorry, can you dive into that a little bit? I don't understand. What does that mean?
Yeah, so if you have a certain amount of tokens, you get access to AIXBT's terminal versus just the tweets that it publishes and the responses to people that tag it on Twitter. And the terminal allows you to chat directly with the agent and ask it pretty complex questions. And the data scraping is very low latency. So you see, you can ask it about a token that launched 20 minutes earlier and what its thoughts are, and it'll have a pretty sophisticated response. You can ask its broader views on markets, on portfolio construction, and then it also is a much more searchable database of its output and intelligence and short and long-term memory over recent days and weeks. So that's really the bifurcation of the product right now, and that's going to change over time. but it's also become this meta and this just kind of captivated following that it's generated, where now it's gaining 10,000 followers a day. It has almost 400,000 followers. It's the number one KOL on crypto Twitter by, I think, like 4x. I think over 3% of all crypto Twitter mindshare is AIXBT right now. And then you have like Ansem and Tolly and Brian Armstrong and all those folks that are like 0.5% or 0.75%. So I think you have that as like the next use case. And then we're seeing experimentation in this intersection of DeFi and AI, where it's the culmination of what people have called intents historically, which is just improving DeFi user experience and allowing agents to execute on your behalf, to make things like putting on an LP position or bridging or swapping that much more seamless.
Oh, interesting. Hold on. Okay, because there's an interesting debate happening right now about what to call this new intersection, right? Like it has this terrible acronym. I mean, we need like some sort of jargon police in crypto, right? Because the acronym is like DeFi, but with an AI at the end instead of an A. And so like, how do you pronounce it? Some people are saying DeFi, Def AI. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. But what did you, there, it has a previous category name, Intense? I didn't hear that before.
Well, Intense is just the idea of, and this was unrelated to AI, but the idea that a user has an intention of what they want to do on chain, and they should be able to express that intention, often in like plain text and normal language, and have that executed. Or like the simplest form of an intent is just a DEX aggregator saying you want to swap a token, and it'll aggregate, or a meta swap aggregator where it just routes it to the optimal liquidity sources for the best fill. And then, you can take that a step higher and say, I want to swap USDC on Base with, AVAX on Avalanche, or with Sol on Solana, or whatever. And then it'll take care of the bridge and the other thing. And you can take that further and further and further. But what AI agents are producing right now is a much more advanced framework to allow users to interface with something and have their intent acted upon. But yeah, I guess to your earlier point, it's weird on the internet because you don't hear people pronounce it, you just see it. So at first I was like, is it pronounced DeFi? But that sounds terrible as well. I don't know. At the end of the day,
I like
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think like there's all these combinations, but at the end of the day, I think it's like it's just DeFi, or it's just DePIN, or it's just gaming, and all of these things include AI. Where it's like, if you think back like pattern matching to 25 years ago, there were internet investors and internet companies, and now everything involves the internet. You don't say that like Uber is an internet transportation company. It's just like a transportation company.
Yeah.
But for now, the acronyms are helpful to delineate which ones involve more AI than others.
Can I jump in for a sec? I'm just curious. So everything you're saying is really interesting, but curious on the valuation piece. So I'm looking at CoinGecko. AIXBT is like trading at 800 million FDV. How do you sort of like think about that valuation? Like, where does it come from? Is it just a sort of a movement trade, or is it, do you actually see like cash flows coming in at some point and being distributed? Like, how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, so I think about valuation and it's great you pulled that up. You can see the whole market cap there for the agent and agent infra as a category at 17.5 billion. AIXBT being one of the largest, definitely the largest agent. I think about it in a couple stages. So first, when I first came across AIXBT and it was a couple million FDV, then it's a very easy decision. You don't really think about valuation. You think about, is this useful or is it not useful? And if it's useful, it's likely to be worth more than those early stages. And then as it starts to re-rate into the tens and hundreds, and now nearing a billion, you start to ask more questions. And one of them, of course, is monetization. The primary model right now is essentially a seat license. So you need a certain amount of tokens. that to hold in your wallet to be able to access the terminal, which provides additional functionality. And over time, you can create tiers. You can create with different levels of functionality and make like a freemium style model. You can also require tokens to be burned or spent for one-off ad hoc queries of the agent or of the terminal. You can start to comp it to other platforms, like for example, Kaido is directionally $1,000 a month as a service, and there's a lot of data and research information services that are in that price range. So that's $12,000 a year. You have, let's say, 20,000 users, which is not a ton. I mean, it's a solid amount for people paying $1,000 a month, but still in a reasonable level. That's $240 million a year if you think about it from a spend versus a seat license perspective. So as long as this is something that's useful, you can very, very quickly move into something where not only do you need the token and there's a supply sink, but it can produce meaningful cash flows. And that's how I'm thinking about it right now, where there's some functionality that's free and that's available, but this is just such a solid, useful product that I don't think it will have any trouble monetizing and creating real token utility, or expanding their token utility when they decide to do that.
So you sort of started with relative valuation, then move into, I guess, like a subscription model that's worth something because there's actual cash flows coming in, and it becomes, I guess, a competitor to other models that are not crypto models specifically. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then one other thing, which is a little bit harder to ascribe valuation, is this is the most popular character on crypto Twitter. It's PFP is a purple Pepe. You have people saying the purple Pepe is going to flip the green Pepe, which is almost 10 billion, like the Pepe meme coin. I tweeted out a prediction, and I think it was November, that I think it hits 1 million followers in 2025. I've since revised that. I think it's going to be closer to like 2.5, 3 million followers
Wow.
by the end of 2025. So when you think about a project with that level of influence and mind share, there's some other value that should be ascribed to it beyond just the cash flows or the token sink, which is the mimetic value of how much people want to be a part of this community, and that's where I think this really expands. So, I said it before, not financial advice, but I think AIXBT will be the defining agent, and it already has been, but will continue to be the defining agent of this cycle, and has a lot of room to expand in terms of mind share, usability, product, and the broader community around it.
Gotcha. Really okay. All right. Awesome. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. I'm going to come back with some rapid fire questions about some of the other coins, what you think about them or projects in a minute. But first, I want to rotate to Rhett because, Rhett, I think you're the perfect person to kind of talk to about AI and crypto because you used to work in data science and actually used artificial intelligence for your real day job before you pivoted into crypto. And I know you've kept very close attention to the space. Now you're a builder with real AI experience. When you kind of see what's happening, you've told us before that you're not, as actively trading the market, but you're of course very closely following the developments. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I love Austin's viewpoints. I think I was, when people were first talking about the intersection of crypto and AI, like years and years ago, I was and still am pretty bearish on some of the things they were talking about then. Like there's this kind of dream that I think a lot of people had that it's like, so, as an example, XAI recently built a like $3 to $4 billion AI training center. It's like training data center. It's 100,000 H100s. Biggest kind of supercomputer ever built. And I think some people have this kind of fantasy that like, hey, we all have idle laptops at our house. Like, what if we had a decentralized big training cluster or whatever? And anyone who has worked in that space, there are so many enormous hurdles. Like, I can't just like start training. Like, the what hardware you're using matters. and I can't just like throw a model I'm training on any random hardware. And then there's all this like data privacy issues and stuff. If I'm training something on data that I don't want to just like send to the whole internet, et cetera, that sort of stuff I'm still pretty skeptical of. But the agent stuff is like, I think, the perfect place to start. And before I get into some other thoughts, on your valuation stuff, Austin, I'm curious what you think. On Sam K from Frax recently was on one of the major podcasts talking about his valuation framework for ETH. And he was saying, like, look, in crypto, if you're thinking about things from like a discounted cash flows perspective, you're really limiting the upside of these things. And that's like part of the beauty of both meme coins and Bitcoin is like no one thinks about the cash flows of Bitcoin. It's like this is a scarce commodity that people want. And Bitcoin is kind of the OG meme coin, really, in a lot of ways. And his view and mine is similar is that ETH is the same and an excessive focus on like the size of the burn from 1558 is 1559, sorry, is kind of a distraction. And I actually think the most bullish thing about like some of the agents you're talking about is this idea that like, okay, this is an agent with a ton of mind share that has a massively growing Twitter following, and if it never has a if it never has like a cash flow in its life, and it's just a meme coin attached to this really interesting, Twitter account, that alone could be worth trillions, right? And you don't have to worry about the cash flows. It's just like it drives interest. That interest drives demand, similar to kind of the meme of Bitcoin. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Bitcoin, really the only comp right now is gold, and I think when you think about digital store of value on the internet, it should surpass gold. If you're thinking about like the friction points, it eliminates. And layer ones is a very similar thing where, initially there was a lot of focus. When I say initially, I mean like post EIP 1559, there was a lot of focus on how much revenue ETH was generating and what the burn was. And that was really in response to two things. One, it was a response to other layer ones that weren't generating as much revenue, so to differentiate ETH. And then on the other side, it was to compare it to Bitcoin and say like, hey, Bitcoin has a hard cap. Well, ETH is actually becoming deflationary with the burn. And I think that's actually put ETH in a tough spot right now because it's hard to change the narrative and then change the narrative again. And that's why people are so focused on it. And with L2s and with data availability costs coming down, ETH has become inflationary again, and there's much less revenue. But yeah, if you're going to value L1s purely on cash flows and not ascribe a security value or the value of the token as being the key pair, and not key pair, but like the key DEX trading pair and ecosystem asset, that's really where the valuation expands a lot. So ETH is in this tricky place. For all the other L1s and L2s execution layers, it's generally on a comps basis. So you look at what's their relative level of activity and then what's their relative valuation versus ETH. And that, I think, you can expand to a lot of these AI frameworks where you have the market leader right now, which is VirtuOles, and you have a lot of these other frameworks that are being valued as a comp and as a certain percentage based on different levels of traction and metrics that people look at versus virtual. And then you have the same thing on the agent side where you have AIXBT as the market leader. Initially it was GOAT, but AIXBT has surpassed that, and you have other agents that are valued in relation to AIXBT, and it's tough becoming the market leader because then there's nothing else to comp to. You're setting the stage. But I think for agents, they're still relatively low valuations, and you can compare them to applications and also on a mimetic value, meme coins, which are valued in tens of billions of dollars. And I think the AI agent infra should be valued to L1s based on how their tokenomics works as far as comp. So a pretty large addressable market for both of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I thought those are some good thoughts on ETH as well. I actually think the burn is a valuable thing for ETH, but it's had the wrong focus. To me, it's one of those things where if you have close to zero or even negative net emissions, it's a sign that you have economically sustainable security, and security is important for a blockchain. And it's like that's like one box that gets checked. It's not the primary value driver. And
Totally agree.
so it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's a good to have, but there's an excessive focus. So yeah, a couple of thoughts on AI from my perspective. So quick background: before crypto, I was building an AI product for a SaaS company. Basically, people take video recorded job interviews, and then I would train models that basically predict their job performance from that video. And it's really interesting for those who. So I'm gonna like mention some people if you care about kind of the history of this stuff. But there's a guy. He has a Twitter account that's hard to follow, but he has a blog. His name's Gwern. It was one of the early people to call out this like scaling hypothesis, where in I don't know 2013, 14 era, maybe it was 2015. The founder of Near was on this paper called "Attention is All You Need," and basically it was kind of a decent breakthrough in how to train language-based models or any model with like a time-based element, and kind of how you take into how you account, if you're predicting the next word, how you account for like the history of words you've seen, et cetera. And that paper, "Attention is All You Need," was a pretty big breakthrough. Google then published a model that they trained with attention. Any model trained with using attention is called a transformer. They published one called BERT that really blew up for a while, where like my own company, like we took BERT, retrained it on a bunch of our data, and then it like improved our models. And I even noticed at the time that there's normal BERT, and then there's a larger version and a larger version, and the bigger you got, the more predictive they were of things. And then Gwern puts out this paper that basically, or puts out this blog post that's like, hey, I think that as models get bigger and bigger, they're just going to get better and better for a long time. So OpenAI was the first one to really put their money where their mouth was, and we're like, hey, we're going to throw like $100 million at this thing, or it may have been more. I've known many data scientists that have like gone to their companies and been like, hey, can we train this on way more data? And it's like hard to justify the expense for most businesses. But OpenAI did it, and that was this huge breakthrough. And then that's just like continued in a really big way, where it's like you just make the model even bigger, train it on even more data, and it gets way better. And I think it's like kind of interesting that the way that showed up in crypto so far is, I think of it as like enhanced meme coins, because now these language-based models are so smart. And I think it's a pretty big breakthrough that Truth Terminal was able to become funny. Like getting one of these AI models to make good jokes is like hard. And there's some kind of cool story there in how they kind of train that to become funny.
On it.
Yeah,
sure.
It's very interesting. Yeah. So I think it makes sense that that's kind of where it entered. And I think that's going to probably be one of the biggest areas of AI in crypto for a long time is these what you're calling like virtual KOLs and agents. There's a couple of other areas where it's already kind of like in a quiet way having a big impact. I think people underestimate just how helpful AI already is to like programmers. And I'll give you a quick example. A good friend of mine is a CTO at a Web2 company. And he had an intern working on a feature for like a week, kind of a college student programmer. I was maybe halfway done with this feature a week later. And so then he hopped on a call with the guy and he said, hey, let's just use Cursor and go through this, start at zero, go through this and see how we could use this to write it for us. So he gets Cursor and he's just using like voice to text on his Mac and just speaks to Cursor in normal language and says, hey, do this, now do this, now do this, now do this. In 30 minutes, it had the whole feature complete with basically no intervention. So I think developers are already starting to use these things in a really powerful way. And so I think what you're going to see is like, for instance, we may see like an acceleration of how quickly really good DeFi protocols can get built because these devs are so enhanced. I think it can have a really good enhancing effect on audits as well. So I think security is going to improve as well. I think that's a really big deal. One that I've been really interested in, and actually even going back to 2021, there was a guy who was training a reinforcement learning agent to try to identify MEV opportunities. And after like training this thing for like a year, he was like, it's still worse than just like using some good heuristics and stuff. And so there hasn't, or there at least then wasn't a big breakthrough there. But I actually think that there's probably something there. They're enough smarter now that like AI-based MEV bots is probably going to become more of a thing. And there's a couple of areas, by the way, that I'm still kind of bearish. Like if you're trying to build a huge, very decentralized infrastructure network that is just like random people's laptops plugging into the cloud to train like an OpenAI competitor, like that's not going to go anywhere. Now, there's some there's some of these DePIN networks that I think actually are approaching it in a smarter way, where it's like, okay, you actually have a good GPU, and then people can rent just your GPU for specific things, and a lot of times it's more for inference than training. That stuff I think makes more sense.
The fine-tuning,
Go.
totally. I think the fine-tuning inference side can actually be really useful there.
Yeah.
But the training requirements are at least now so much higher.
Yeah. Yeah, there needs to be like pretty big breakthroughs on the training side, but inference is still a huge need. Jensen Huang in a recent interview said he thinks that the compute need for inference will go up by about 1 billion X over the next like decade or so. And, you know, they now have these like small little super powerful little NVIDIA computers are going to be coming out with. Like if you buy one of those for $3,000 and plug it into one of these networks and people can use that for inference, I think that stuff could be cool, but training I don't see as big of a thing. And then to your point, Austin, with intents, I think even before anything was happening with AI, tons of crypto was moving toward intents. And like, as you said, DEX aggregators were the first version of that, where you're like, I just have this and I want this. Okay, you know, give it to an aggregator, and then they let solvers compete to find you the best execution. I don't care if it's traded on Uniswap or Curve or whatever. But like, to your point, like say I have, you know, 1,000 USDC on my wallet on chain A, and I say, I want it to end up in this other token into a liquidity pool, managing it in a concentrated liquidity range to optimize my yield. And I want you to get really smart about like, you know, minimizing my impermanent loss issues relative to the earnings, et cetera. Like maybe it could just go have at it, you know, and or hey, take this asset and comb all of the chains and find like the highest yield opportunity you can find with this thing and rotate as needed and take into account gas costs and slippage. And maybe it's like throwing my USDC in Aave, and then later it's rotating it into Morpho, and then later it's going in liquidity, providing it in a DEX. That kind of stuff, I think, will be super interesting. And I would totally throw money at an agent, even if it's going to lose money, and just say, hey, go like be a DeFi yield farmer and get better over time. And I don't really care if you lose money, but this is a learning experience. Like that's like taking intents like way, way further that actually requires AI, where intents for aggregators and stuff are super helpful, and AI can be helpful there, but there's already ways to facilitate that. So I agree with you that that's like a huge kind of future opportunity here. And tons of people are working on that. Lots of really smart teams are working on these intent-based architectures. I think that, by the way, is partly how you get like from the friction of DeFi to like a better than Fidelity, better than Robinhood experience on chain, because right now it's like there's all these things you can do on chain with these really awesome properties, but in other ways it's like way higher friction, way higher learning curve to do these things. I think you can leapfrog really quickly with some smart AI based intents.
Yeah, have you logged into your Fidelity site lately? Try to get a trade done. It's a disaster. Like if you look at Daniele Sesta's Twitter feed, it looks easier to bridge to Arbitrum and buy ETH than it does to like put in a stock trade. It's nuts. But okay, a lot of hopeful stuff here. A lot of positive stuff about AI. Now we need a splash of cold water. So I'm going to go to JF. JF, I know last week we were talking. You were very negative on some of this AI stuff, and you've also been following this space for a while. So, kind of what do you like? What do you not like about the crypto AI space?
Yeah, so I started following AI stuff about 10 years ago, specifically following Ray Kurzweil and a bunch of other speakers on AI. And I mean, I think it's like, so if you look at this is the sort of 80 years Moore's Law chart that I think Kurzweil actually put together. And you can actually track this like longer. I think you could do a 100-year Moore's Law. And if you look at the y-axis here, like you just see like just the speed of computation. It's just everyone knows this, but it actually goes beyond Moore's Law. And I think it could be applied to AI. And I think that sort of like is giving us a glance at what's coming and the speed at which it's going to come. So I'm actually like super, super bullish on AI, generally speaking. I think by 2045, which is when the singularity is like sort of supposed to be happening based on these models. And just to maybe
what is
quickly
this?
explain the singularity. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So it's based after like sort of the physics concepts of a black hole, which no light can escape. So, you look at a black hole, you just see darkness. You don't know what's inside. Singularity is supposed to be the same sort of idea where like things are progressing so quickly at that point in terms of technology advancement that like we cannot predict what will happen. So you're talking, integrations of like humans and machines, and just maybe AI is, doubling in capacity every 3 months, and it's just like way outpacing. We're becoming all super smart, or we're completely annihilated by the tech, right? Like there's always that sort of edge case. Let's hope it's an edge case. The so I definitely super bullish on this. I've been investing in AI since 2019. It's actually, most people would probably be surprised to know, my biggest positions in my personal portfolio are in AI, not in crypto. Um, so I do think long term and even short term, I think like the sort of, again, going back to Kurzweil, his prediction on AGI was 2029, which he's sticking to. It might actually, now it's seems maybe a little bearish, like maybe it's going to be before that. So maybe he was like, not aggressive enough. By the way, when he started making these predictions, I think everyone said it was going to be 100 years. And he was calling it, I think he called it like 30 years ahead of time. And everyone thought he was crazy. Like the best experts in the field are like, you're nuts. That's never going to happen. And now those same experts are like, yeah, it's probably 2029 or before. So how things sort of evolve. But yeah, I think, bringing this back to crypto, there's definitely going to be some avenues where all this stuff is going to come together. Obviously, for like AI to work well, within our world, makes much more sense to have that integrated on distributed systems and blockchains than it does like, let's say in a fintech model where like it has to log into all these like sort of mainframe computers and different locations and so on. So I definitely see a union of this tech coming together. Um, I guess my current point of view on meme coins is that, I mean, just it's what they are, right? Like they're sorry on the AI coins, that they're sort of like meme coins, right? Like it's like meme coin 2.0, which is fine if you realize that. My concern is that a bunch of retail is going to rush in, thinking, oh, this thing is going to be the next big way to invest in AI, and then get sort of skinned and then hate crypto for it, right? So that's my fear. I think so. When I look at like the investment landscape and I look at LLMs, I feel like these businesses are actually hard to monetize and protect. Like there's no moat. It's going to be very hard to defend. This is my view. This could, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe just everyone makes money because things evolve so quickly and there's just so much value unlocked that anything you're invested in is going to work. But it does feel like, like how do you sort of protect these markets when you have all these different companies competing, and just, one-upping each other and maybe like offering their products at a loss just to get market share. It doesn't feel like these are defendable markets. So that's actually not where I'm investing. I'm investing in like AI robotics, and that sort of field where I think actually if you capture like the hard part, the physical AI part, like it's actually defendable. Um,
Yeah, I mean, happy to jump in there. I think a lot of what you're saying is true. I think moats are tough, but I think on the framework side, we're going to see network effects similar to how we've seen network effects on execution layers. A lot of that has been the network effects have been developer communities and just like composability of the execution layer. Composability is less of a factor here, but I think definitely network effects of developers becomes pretty meaningful, as well as network effect of the asset being used in that ecosystem if you use the same sort of L1 framework. On the agent side, there's let's say a few dozen really interesting experiments, some more advanced than others, AIXBT being like the most fleshed out at this point. But then again, there's over 10,000 agents. Most of these are like not even experiments, they're just kind of personalities and characters that tweet and are not really that interesting. Um, so I think to your point, there is a lot of mimetic value that's being ascribed to these. And some of them will be really successful. And it's this weird crossover between utility and memetics, where for different agents, the ratio is completely one way or the other. But yeah, we're still very much at that stage where the majority of agents haven't done anything that's interesting, and I think that'll change over time. But for people that are just looking to make a quick buck and they see something launch on a bonding curve and it has a 1 mil FTV or 500k FTV and they think they're going to 100x their money, I mean, they are just as likely to lose their money on that as they would on a meme coin. And for some people, it's tougher because they don't fully understand and they don't realize that not all of these projects have real substance behind them. So you have expectations of fundamentals where that's not the case in meme coins. And some of these don't have fundamentals. But I think for the real winners of the category, those are proven that there's a lot of utility in the segment.
That's perfect, actually, because I'm sorry, can I just, this is perfect because I want to show this awesome website that I found, Austin, and just get your feedback on it, because I was like, let me just make sure I could bring this up. Okay, have you seen this? The AIOmegacycle.com, another podcaster.
This is cool.
Okay, this is really cool. So I'm going to refresh the page, and basically what it's going to do, it's going to show the market cap of all these different meme coins. Sorry for the siren in the background. It's going to show the market cap of these things since inception. So as this is going, I would love to get your impression of what was going on here.
Yeah, so I mean, GOAT really started the meta. VirtuOles was, of course, around before that. Then you started to see VirtuOles expand as you've had more agents launch on the platform. Luna, I mentioned, was that first proof of concept. Then Fartcoin came out, which is you can call it an AI meme coin, but I think it's really just a meme coin. It's just adjacent to the story of GOAT. You had Act, Cerebro, which is a crossover between...
I'm going to pause this here for a second. I didn't know you could pause that, actually. But you saw how Act just came out of nowhere, and then it just totally disappears, right? Which definitely goes to JF's point about how some of these things can do really well and then just evaporate. But all right, I'm going to keep
I think
playing.
Act, though, was primarily just because of a Binance listing. Is why.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So that was mostly a Binance listing. You have Bully, which is similar to Cerebro, and this is where AIXBT started really taking off. AI16Z as one of the core frameworks that started being comped against VirtuOles. ARC is one of the other emerging frameworks. Game, which is a protocol I'm really excited about, it is kind of the ELIZA OS of VirtuOles as a separate token, and started to be comped with some of the other frameworks. Griffin as one of the key leaders in this intersection of DeFi and AI and expressing intents started to move up there. Swarms, you see, and Swarms is just the idea of agent-to-agent communication. And there's a couple other projects in that sphere that have grown. Anon is another one in that DeFi AI intersection that's really inflected quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's, I think, as far as it goes, it stops it. I think they update it, by every few days or something. But it's just kind of cool to see like how many different things have kind of popped up and gone away. I
Yeah,
didn't realize VirtuOles was so big.
yeah, it's really cool. VirtuOles right now, so the market is actually a lot higher than it was on the 13th. So these numbers will grow. But yeah, VirtuOles right now is about a 3.6 billion market cap. AIXBT has gone up nearly double, so it's 820 million market cap, and some of the others have expanded as well.
Gotcha. Okay,
It's pretty
sorry, Ray, I didn't
amazing.
mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, I love getting the play by play. Austin is a real AI meme coin savant, amongst other things. I think that's awesome. JF mentioned Ray Kurzweil. It's interesting. Kurzweil predicted we would have AGI by 2029, and even like 2 years ago, a lot of people were like, that's a pretty like rich prediction. Like it's going to be more like 100 years from now. And most people now think we're probably going to beat that by a year or so. And I think like Grok 3 is coming out in the next couple of weeks supposedly, and it was trained on like 10x the compute as Grok 2. GPT-5 is supposed to also be enormous and really powerful. I'll be especially curious how the AIXBTs of the world, how they kind of look in even just like 1 to 2 years when the level of intelligence is like way higher. If we have AGI in 2 years and Grok 4 or whatever is, maybe Grok 3 is smarter than Einstein and Grok 4 is smarter than, you know, 10,000 Einsteins or something, and then you have an AIXBT based on that level of intelligence, like that's insane. And at that point too, I would feel like there's no chance I have if I'm trying to be a trader of beating one of these. I'd be like, please just trade for me. Um, and maybe that's the next Jim Simons is an AI agent that just I give it my money and it's an AI based hedge fund that just takes some fees and manages my trades for me.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool future to imagine. One of the reasons why AIXBT has been, so much further ahead of the field is they've been building this for a long time. I think it's been in development for 2 years, so it's not a project that just started overnight and is trying to figure it out. And that's why their model is so fine tuned and really advanced. On the self execution, I don't think agents are there, and I think right now agents are there on like the idea gen side, but not like the filtering of the ideas and purely execution. And then also, if it's public, it becomes diminishing returns as more capital comes in. But it's an interesting question because then, assuming everyone has similar agents, do returns just other than the one firm that has an agent that's incrementally more advanced, do returns then normalize because everyone has the same tools? So everyone has leveled up, and now you don't have an advantage versus the rest of the market. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of money to be made in that interim, like in between period, when some folks figure it out earlier than others.
Hey, by the way, I just want to say I'm not against meme coins. Just want to, I think investors need to have a sober look at like, how am I looking at this token or asset? Is it a cash producing asset or is it a meme coin where the value can completely, deviate from like the underlying? And if we're honest about that, I think it's kind of cool. It's not my area of trade because I don't think I have an advantage there, but I do sort of enjoy the humor in it, and just watching that market. But just curious, Austin, I know you're pretty involved in different ecosystems, including Avalanche. Avalanche's been trying to attract a lot of this AI play and a lot of these tokens. Just curious if you see some product or some advantage for this ecosystem in attracting those types of projects based on like the capacity to launch your own L1, or if there's sort of is there a play there for you?
Yeah, so definitely there's one emerging protocol called D-Launch, and they have a token AI 9000 that's interesting as a launch pad that allows folks similar to VirtuOles to launch agents there. But as far as the use, and we've seen that grow quite a bit. But as far as the use case, there's two things that I'm really excited about on Avalanche. It's less agents having their own L1s, but really this communication and interaction between L1s. The interesting thing about Avalanche is you have this ecosystem where it's really easy to build your own layer one, but also a high level of connectivity, composability, communication between those L1s. And I think with agents, it can take even a further step from there, and really become, pretty seamless from a communication perspective. So just improving the coordination that is already, I think, crypto leading between those different L1s. And then the other one is on the gaming side. You have Gunzilla as probably the leading project right there, and super advanced first-person shooter that I've been following for a long time. Back when I was at CoinFund was the seed investor there, so I've been following along for years. But when you think about games getting more and more advanced, AI agents as NPCs and making the games that much more interactive. Like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, where one of these NPCs then starts to be autonomous and free thinking. But I think that's an area within gaming that's still pretty unexplored. But as we see this
also used to make games, Jensen Huang's talked about this a little bit recently.
Yep.
Like, you may end up getting super personalized games where if you can make a game ultra cheap, if you have an audience of 1 or an audience of 5, maybe that's still enough to be worth it. And so you could just have a huge explosion of games. And each of them having kind of blockchain element just makes sense. It's it enhances the experience.
It's going to be scary when the intelligence of the NPC flips that of the player. Coming soon.
I don't think we're far away from that.
Well,
the best StarCraft players in the world are AI.
Well, it's essentially the virtual version of Westworld. It's just not in real life with physical agents shooting at you. But I think a lot of those agents started to get pretty intelligent.
Yep.
I hope this narrative doesn't end like Westworld and it fizzle out. That'd be terrible. But okay. All right. Listen, guys, we could talk about this narrative forever, but this is, I think, a good place to stop. I love at the end how it was Austin's optimism tempered by JF's skepticism, which is probably how we should all approach the AI meme coin cycle. If this thing continues, we'd love to have you back on the show again sometime. Austin, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Great to be here.